talk about wealth of knowledge. You bring it all together.
Put the work in now to get yourself structured and organized and documented.
We need to grow this top line.
There is no one size fits all for this industry.
Hey Restorers, thanks for checking out a fresh episode of the Restoration Masterclass. We're talking about profitability, and today I have somebody unique in the hot seat. She's going to bring it all home for this series where we're talking about profitability. I have Rachel Stewart, who's the CEO of Accelerate on the software side of things, but she has a unique background where she was on the contractor side before moving over to the software space, and she really helped a restoration company in Arizona grow considerably in a very short time through her operations role before she moved over to the technology space. So we are here to talk about overall tech profitability and what she's seen on the contractor side and the technology side and bring it all together. So Rachel, thank you very much for being here. I know I introduced you a little bit, but for those who don't know you, go ahead and give a better introduction than I gave of who you are and a little bit about your background.
Of course. First of all, thank you for having me. Like she said, my name is Rachel Stewart. I'm the founder and CEO of Accelerate Restoration Software. But before that, I was running a restoration company for about 12 or 13 years. And we scaled from about 1.5 million when I started with that team to over 20 million towards the end there. And they're continuing to even grow bigger than that. So yeah, seen quite a few things when it comes to profitability and a lot of different vantage points.
So what was one of the reasons that you made the switch from being on the contractor side to go into the software space and innovating and coming up with kind of a new product?
Basically because we had experienced all of the different software platforms in the space. And I think where we saw that there was a gap was that marriage between easy field capture, making sure that it's super easy for your field technicians and the people that are on your front line to get information into the system, and then being able to have some of that overall management capabilities with reporting and metrics and KPIs and all of the things that you really need to run your business by the numbers. And so we just saw that there was challenges in both those areas. So that's really the reason that I had kind of moved over into software. I never thought I'd be in technology, but here we are.
But here we are. So what do you see from the contractor side? What are contractors doing well when it comes to finding ways to be profitable within their organizations?
I think that contractors over the period that I've been in the industry, they've had a lot of growth in terms of being able to run their business and run it by the numbers. And I think especially early days, when I was in there wasn't a lot of emphasis on that. And people were just like, oh, we're just out there doing the work. And the money part, if we do good work, then the money part will take care of itself. And I think as the industry got more challenging, as insurance carriers started tightening their checkbooks, and everybody had to get a little bit more savvy. So I think that people are definitely more aware of their numbers, the good and the bad. So I think that is something that has come a long way. And I think it's a grow up, for the industry.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So on the flip side, where do you see the industry being weak when it comes to profitability? And this is a kind of a double-sided question, right? Because it also profitability differs. Some people argue that it doesn't, but differs if you're doing TPA work versus independent work. There's different potentially margins there. But where do you see the industry needing to improve when it comes to being able to be profitable?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest fallacy that people fall into is that it's about the top line number. And if they can just get their top line number to where their target is, then that will fix everything else that's wrong in the business. And it doesn't. It just compounds the problem. It just makes those leaky buckets bigger. It's harder to manage and oversight as you grow, and especially if you're growing quickly. There's just a lot of ways for profit to leak out. And so I think really getting your systems dialed in early and being aware of those problems early, like get profitable with $1 before you try to do $100 million. And I mean, obviously there's a tipping point, right? Like there's like when you're starting off your business, there's going to probably be a season of not being profitable, but in general, you get to a certain place And from there on, if you can really dial in your efficiencies, your SOPs, your workflows, the people, everybody really knows what they're responsible for and what numbers they're tweaking, makes a very, very big difference. Trying to do that later.
Were there phases that you saw as you were growing to the $20 million mark, different phases that you saw where it's like, okay, we got to this marker and then we realized we needed to regroup and to kind of change what we were looking at. And then we got here and then it felt like, oh, we got to regroup again. Did you have kind of those milestones, or were you able to get good processes in place that allowed you to scale that fast without needing major regroups along the way?
Yeah, and I think really it's actually much easier to be profitable smaller than it is bigger. And so like our stages where we kind of came to a stop had more to do with like the growth of our employees and them wanting to scale. And then you're like, okay, now we need to increase the top line to give them more opportunities to grow. But obviously when you can have oversight at a smaller size, then obviously your numbers are going to be better. And so then you have to be able to replicate that oversight in ways as you scale where you're not as like, you know, your hands aren't getting dirty on the job sites and this kind of thing. So I really think that, again, start early, start looking at those numbers, and if you're not profitable now, you're not going to be profitable later. So get this dialed in and then really look at that. The other thing I would say is look at your mix of work. And that's really, really important to profitability. And obviously, reconstruction is just going to take longer. It's going to be more expensive. You're going to be carrying jobs longer, and they tend to be less profitable. I'm not saying that you can't be profitable doing reconstruction work. A large part of our work was reconstruction work, but there are a lot of ways that can go wrong. So making sure you have those dialed in. So I would look at all of your efficiencies. I would look at the way that you're collecting cash and making sure that you're cash positive, and making sure that you're not bankrolling, having to dive into your lines of credit to carry some of these bigger projects. Now, there are going to be some of those big projects where you're just going to have to get a line of credit on. That's just, you know, the nature of the beast if you're doing large loss. But for the most part, your everyday type of work, you got to keep that cash positive, and you got to really be looking at like your financial AR systems to make sure that cash flow is staying where it needs to.
Yes. Okay. I have kind of found that a lot of restorers feel like there is this range, this small window where profitability lies for restorers, and you just can't push past X percentage or whatever. Do you feel like that's true, where there's this range, or do you think profitability companies really can push past kind of the like industry trends where people say X number?
I definitely think you can push outside industry trends. Obviously, there is a cap that you're going to get to.
Of course.
Any service business, there's going to be a cap. But that being said, I would really look at the mix of the work you're trying to do. I would look at like the different verticals. So some work is going to be easier to get in the door, and it's going to be maybe, you know, more consistent, but it's going to be less profitable. But that's not to say that you can't maximize the profit within that vertical. You just have to really be clear about what your sweet spot is and what your particular company, like what your differentiator is, what work you guys know how to really do well, and then really target that work. I would also say, like, look at your average job size, because that can make a big difference too. And as you like start looking at like the targeted average job size for you and start trying to maximize that kind of work as you're going out with your marketing teams and all of those kind of, and looking at like the targets that you're going after, just be very clear on what kind of company you are and what kind of work you want to do, and say no more often. I think people don't say no enough, and then they get busy doing work that it's not ideal, but they're like, but it keeps the lights on. But the problem is that you spend all of your time and effort doing that kind of work and focusing, and there's like where all of the headaches are, and you're not doing where your specialty work is and where you're really good at, and you end up spinning your wheels where you don't really want to spin them. So I think saying no, being very clear about your target, look at your mix between reconstruction or maybe your MIT and mold and contents, maybe start trying to change where that mix is. Looking at the residential versus commercial, those type of things, I think make a big difference.
Yeah, that's all really, really good advice. So, okay, so before we wrap it up, then bring it together on where you think the intersection is between profitability and using technology. I think, and one of the things that came out of State of the Industry is restorers are going back to the space of being overwhelmed by the amount of technology and the amount of options out there, and a little, I think, confused about where to go, what to leverage, all of that. So where does it meet in the middle? How can restorers be successful with their technology and marrying it with profitability?
Yeah. Okay. So overall, in any, like whether it's technology or your other types of work, like however you're looking at your business, really look at the efficiencies. So whether that's on your mitigation team, really trying to maximize your labor efficiency and making sure that number is right. And then on the reconstruction, if you're looking at your efficiency, just saving a couple of days on every single job is going to greatly boost your profitability. So, and so like, that's what I would look at is each one of your divisions and how you can get the most efficiency out of that. And then to pull all of that together, and where you start seeing that is in your technology, the technology stream that runs through your entire company, and having those SOPs, those workflows, those processes, and start just seeing where you can knock off inefficiencies, where the bottlenecks are, how you could solve multiple problems with one solution. And I'm not saying necessarily one technology solution. I'm just saying like one system or process. And I know that I very much understand the sentiment is the frustration with, okay, there's too many systems and it's very fragmented. And I was in that very, very same boat. But then I came to realize it's not necessarily that we want one system, although it would be amazing if there was one system that would do everything. But the problem is that nobody would want to pay for that. And you have to, like, our TAM, like our market is just not big enough to justify like that behemoth of a company. Like you can't have Google dollars in restaurant, right? Like, it just becomes unfeasible. So the problem is not that we need one system that does everything from our estimating to our scheduling, for our marketing, from our, our HR, it does everything. You want one that does a good portion. But most importantly, you want what they do to be world-class. And then, because the user experience is what's really important. When you try to do everything, you become like a master of nothing. And it's just like a big, like overinflated system that is just heavy and not efficient, right? So really what you're looking at is a system that talks to the other system. So you find your world-class, and then what APIs are available there that makes it seamless, right? Like I have no problem. I don't get on my computer every day and throw a big fit that Word doesn't do what Excel does. Like I don't. Like I know what Excel does and I know what Word does, and they work really well together. But why do they work really well together? Because you have an operating system that makes them work well in tandem. And so I think that's where we need to get to as an industry, is these systems working really well and it's seamless between one, and you're not doing double entry, and the information is flowing back and forth, and you do something in one system and it recognizes it in another system and it moves the workflow or whatnot. So that was a long-winded thing to say, like, as you're looking at your efficiencies, maybe it's not so much more like how many systems can I eliminate? I mean, I do think that's maybe the very like low hanging fruit, but then also look at like what is going to create a better experience and what is going to be time saving for my people. And then there's so many things like communication. If you're still communicating through email and text message, I think you're missing the boat. There's so many more there's a lot more platforms out there that are way more efficient in terms of communication, and that should not be your primary source. And so start looking at how these systems work and where you can do a little tweaks of getting rid of people having to manually push buttons and manually manage workflows and manually doing anything. It's like, okay, there's all sorts of automations that can happen. One action or another. All of these processes can be delegated to technology, and that you're not having to have somebody call on the phone and say, hey, we need asbestos testing out here. Right? They click a button in the system, asbestos testing is needed. It shoots off a notification to your vendor, your partner. They dispatch crews, information comes back. Nobody has to touch it. It's just happening in the process of doing work. And I think those are the type of things that people need to be looking at as they're evaluating. So some of it's on the work side, looking at how your staff is spending their time, where the bottlenecks are in your company. If that transition from like mitigation to reconstruction is challenging, like how to simplify that and create so it's seamless. Anyway, those would be the things I would be looking at.
That was perfect. I liked your analogy of not going into Excel and expecting it to act like Word or vice versa. I mean, for anybody who's tried to create a table in Word, it's, maddening, and you would never write a document in Excel. So that was a good analogy. Rachel, thank you very much for all of your wisdom and insight. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
No, I just love everything that you're doing. I think CNR is such a resource to contractors. So I'm a big fan.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I look forward to seeing you at trade shows next year.
Yep, sounds good.